My name is Joe. I work at an old lumber mill in rural Montana. It has long been the town's main source of income. Tucked away at the end of a road deep in the forest, this desolate factory was busy during the day, but unsettling at night. The day shift was better, but working alone on the night shift scared most of the workers. That night started off like any other. It was past midnight. I was the only one in the factory. Rain tapped against the windows and wind howled through the chimneys. For the past few weeks, strange things had been happening during the night shift. Tools moved on their own. Machines seemed to operate without human touch. But no one took it seriously. I was working in the main hall where huge logs were cut, and the air was thick with the smell of sawdust. The roar of the electric saw drowned out my thoughts. Suddenly, the lights flickered, then went out completely. I waited in the darkness. It usually took a few seconds for the generator to kick in, but in that moment it felt like forever. The generator eventually started and the hall was lit again. That's when I noticed something moving between the logs. At first I thought it was a large dog or a bear, but then the thing slowly stood up. It had a tall, thin frame, its skin a pale, sickly gray. Its arms reached down to its knees. Slowly it turned its head toward me. Its eyes were black and lifeless, as if they swallowed all the light. I froze. My eyes were locked on the creatures. My heart was about to burst out of my chest. Suddenly, the being moved toward a machine. It stopped in front of the whirling blades and gently touched one. The spinning blades of the saw began to slow, as if an invisible force had grabbed them. Then they stopped entirely. I swallowed hard. I wanted to step back, but my legs were locked in place. And then the creature vanished. I scanned the room with my eyes, but it was nowhere to be found. I ran to the control room. I tried to check the camera recordings, but the monitors only showed static. Then I heard a crackling sound. One of the screens suddenly came to life, and there it was, that creature. But closer this time. Its face leaned in toward the camera. Its eyes glowed among the static. Then I heard a rasping voice in my ear. Observer. Chosen. All at once, the screens went black. My heart pounded wildly. Suppressing my fear, I returned to the main hall. I saw a trail on the floor near the machines, a damp, sticky fluid, marking where the creature had passed. I followed the trail to the back storage room. I opened the door and saw streaks of light. Shafts of blue and purple light rose up to the factory roof. At the center of the lights was the creature. Metallic particles floated around it in midair. I blinked, but the image didn't change. Suddenly, the lights intensified, and the creature vanished. Moments later, the factory was cloaked in darkness once more, as if nothing had ever happened. When the security guards arrived, I told them everything, but they didn't believe me. When they checked the camera footage, there was nothing, only me, running around in a panic. The next day, the other workers found something strange. Burn marks on the floor of the back storage room. Some of the machines were twisted in unnatural ways, and metal surfaces were scorched and warped. Weeks passed, but at night I still felt those eyes. One evening, I went to the old town library. There, I spoke with an elderly man who had once worked in the same factory years ago. With a sly smile, he began to speak. Years ago, when I was young, something similar happened during a night shift at that same factory. One of the workers vanished, never came back. People spoke of glowing lights deep in the woods. My blood ran cold. Had the lights returned, or had they never left? A week later, a strange metallic orb was found in the back storage room of the factory. No one knew what it was. Scientists came to investigate, but I had the feeling they weren't telling me everything. They took the orb away, but I still feel those eyes watching me at night. I don't work alone anymore. Whenever there's a night shift, I feel the weight of those eyes on my back, because I know they will return. When I arrived at my small cabin deep in the forest, I was utterly exhausted. This peaceful spot, which I had chosen to escape city life, was the perfect place to clear my mind. Sometimes solitude can be healing, but that night it would turn into something else entirely. Around midnight, the sky was covered in a dark veil. The stars were bright and motionless, as always. But my eyes locked onto something, a light shining in the distance, growing larger and moving. At first, I thought it was a shooting star, but the light changed direction, as if it was searching for me. My heart started pounding. The light suddenly fixed itself above me. As my eyes were blinded, the entire area around the cabin lit up as if it were daytime. I felt something was wrong. Under the light, I felt frozen, like time had stopped. Then the light vanished, and an eerie silence took its place. When I noticed the shadow on the ground, a chill spread through my veins. I slowly lifted my head. About 10 meters away, a tall and slender being was watching me. Its skin was a pale gray, and it stood nearly 2 meters tall. Its large, pitch-black eyes were locked onto mine. My knees trembled as I took a few steps back. I tripped on the wooden porch and fell. The being began to approach slowly. Its steps were light, but with each one, I felt the ground tremble. Even though my instincts screamed for me to run, I couldn't take my eyes off it. With a last burst of strength, I stood and slammed the door shut, locking it quickly. I panted and looked outside through the window. The being stood in the middle of the porch, tilting its head slightly. At that moment, a hum echoed in my mind. Help! The sound wasn't in my ears, it was inside my head. I knew where it came from, but I didn't want to accept it. The creature stared at me, unmoving, as if it didn't dare come closer. Fear slowly gave way to curiosity. I whispered through the glass, Why are you here?" The response echoed in my mind again. Wounded. Help. My breath caught. It wasn't speaking of a stranger. It was speaking as a wounded being. I gathered my courage and opened the door slightly. The creature had collapsed to the ground, pressing its long fingers to its abdomen. When it raised its hand, I saw a black liquid dripping between its fingers. As I got closer, it lifted its head and closed its eyes. I knelt beside it, unsure of what to do, my hands trembling in the air. That's when I noticed its skin was softly glowing. It radiated heat, but it was a cold kind of light. Just then, more lights appeared in the sky. As I blinked, a sound like thunder filled the air. I looked up to see 4 or 5 spacecraft descending slowly. A storm of fear surged inside me. The creature opened its eyes and the voice returned to my head. "They are after me." The being began to tremble. It crawled toward the door and started drawing symbols on the ground with its fingers. The patterns glowed a fluorescent green. At that moment, the lights in the sky grew closer. The creature looked into my eyes and whispered, "To live with you." A wave of compassion rose within me. Whatever this thing was, it was being hunted, and those coming for it, they were approaching with terrifying power. I pulled the creature inside and shut the door. From the back window, I watched the ships descend over the cabin. The sky suddenly darkened. Wind howled. The walls of the cabin shook as beams of light shone through the windows. The creature, weakly gazing into my eyes, said one last thing: "Human, trust." At that moment, I felt the door shatter and a metallic scent filled the air. Bright lights began to spin inside the cabin. My vision faded, and the last thing I saw before losing consciousness was the creature reaching its hands toward my face. When I opened my eyes, I was alone in the forest. The cabin had vanished. The lights were gone. On the ground, the fluorescent symbols still glowed faintly. Nothing was the same after that night. As I walked among people, I felt eyes reading my mind. Had I survived because it trusted me? Or had the creature's mind fused with mine? I couldn't tell anyone. I feared being called insane. But those eyes, in them, I had seen the pain and helplessness of a life from another world. That night, I knew my life would never be the same again. The only thing I'm certain of is that I touched its loneliness and fear. And maybe that's why I still hear its voice calling to me in my dreams. My name is Jack. That night, I was returning from a business trip. I was in the final stretch of my journey, a desolate highway, endless darkness, and a torrential downpour. My windshield wipers battled the rain as my headlights cast a faint beam over the slick road. It was past midnight. My eyelids were heavy, but sleep wasn't an option. Even the occasional car that had passed earlier was now gone. A crackling country song played on the radio when suddenly the sky lit up with a flash of lightning. In that moment, I saw something on the side of the road. There was a figure standing in the spot, illuminated by my headlights. At first glance, I thought it was a person. I hit the brakes and stopped. Slowly shifting into reverse, I backed up a few meters. My heart was pounding in my chest. The rain was falling even harder now. I rolled the window down slightly. "Hey, do you need help?" I called out. No answer, just the sound of the rain. When I moved the light closer, I noticed the figure wasn't moving. It had a thin, tall body, seemingly covered in wet clothes. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't clothing, it was skin. Its skin was a dull, concrete-like gray, and its face was far from human. Its eyes, those eyes were enormous, pitch black without a hint of light and seemingly bottomless. I felt like it wasn't just looking at me. It was seeing into my soul. Suddenly, it tilted its head and let out a deep, crackling sound like metal grinding against stone. Panicked, I rolled up the window and slammed on the gas. My tires slipped in the mud, but eventually caught traction and sped off. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The thing was gone. My heart felt like it was going to explode. A little while later, the rain intensified. Fog rolled in. I took a deep breath, but I could still see those endless black eyes in my mind. Just as I was starting to calm down, I saw a light ahead on the road. At first, I thought it was another car, but the light wasn't moving. As I got closer, I saw a glowing object in the middle of the road, circular in shape with red and blue lights swirling around it. Suddenly, my car engine died. The headlights went out and a metallic crackling came through the radio. I turned the key, but the engine wouldn't start. I felt trapped inside the car. That's when more figures appeared at the roadside. They looked like the creature I had seen earlier, but now there were 3 of them. They slowly began walking toward my car. I shut my eyes and started praying. The car doors were locked, but they were staring at me through the glass. Then the roof of the car buckled inward with a loud metallic crash, like something heavy had landed on it. I looked up through the sunroof and saw one of the creatures on top of the car, dragging its long fingers across the glass. I couldn't even scream. Then I noticed the lights intensifying. The red and blue lights completely engulfed my car. When I opened my eyes again, the creatures were gone. The engine restarted on its own. I floored the gas pedal and drove off. When I finally saw the lights of the city in the distance, my phone inside the car began to ring. The screen said, "Unknown number." I answered it, but all I could hear was that same metallic, guttural growl. A moment later, the phone rang again. This time, the screen went completely black, but the same harsh static screeched from the speaker. I tried to turn it off, but the screen was frozen. Suddenly, the same sound came through the radio. Inside the car, it felt like metallic echoes were clashing against each other. I saw a gas station on the side of the road and pulled in. My hands were shaking and sweat drenched my forehead. I opened the door and stepped outside. The rain was still pouring heavily. The station attendant gave me a strange look. I asked him to call the police. When the police arrived, I tried to explain what had happened, but it all sounded like madness. The report labeled it as traumatic stress and hallucination. The next day, I found long scratches and burn marks on the roof of my car. According to the police report, no weather or traffic incidents had been recorded on that road that night. Since then, I've continued to hear that same crackling noise in my sleep. On some nights, I wake up to the sound of knocking on my window and see faint blue glows in the sky. But I know those things were real. Then I read a news article. Several cars had vanished along that same highway. Only the abandoned vehicles were found, with the passengers' belongings still inside, but the people themselves missing. Now I'm afraid to be alone. It feels like they'll come back. I know one day they will return, and when they do, maybe I'll vanish for good.